The last time you got sick, you probably did something your ancestors never could. You opened a cabinet, you pulled out a pill, and within hours, the fever broke. For most of human history, there was no cabinet, there was no pill, there was no doctor you could call. When a fever hit, you were alone with it. When infections set in, you either survived or you didn't. And yet, here you are, the direct descendant of every single human being who ever got sick and lived. So what did they actually do? Let's start with what ancient humans were actually up against. For 300,000 years, the leading causes of death were not heart disease or cancer. They were infected wounds, parasites, broken bones that never healed right, respiratory infections, childbirth. And they faced it all without a single synthetic drug in existence. But here's what most people get wrong. They didn't face it with nothing. In 1960, a scientist named Ralph Selecki was excavating a Neanderthal burial site. He found the skeleton of a man who died roughly 60,000 years ago. Buried alongside him were traces of pollen. Not random pollen, pollen from at least 8 specific plant species: yarrow, groundsel, ephedra. Every single one is still used in medicine today. Someone had carefully placed healing plants next to a sick or dying man 60,000 years ago. That is not primitive behavior. That is pharmacology. By studying living hunter-gatherer groups, anthropologists have pieced together what ancient medicine actually looked like, and it was nothing like you'd expect. The Hadza of Tanzania, one of the last groups still living the original human lifestyle, carry a working knowledge of over 300 plant species, not as food, as medicine. They know which roots reduce fever, which barks kill parasites, which leaves stop bleeding when pressed against a wound. This knowledge isn't written down anywhere. It's memorized, passed verbally from parent to child for tens of thousands of years. Ancient humans were running experiments. They just didn't call them that. But plants were only part of it. The other part was the healer. Every ancient human group ever studied had one: a shaman, a medicine man, a village elder who knew the cures. And their job was not just to give you plants. Anthropologists have found that ancient healers performed what we would now recognize as surgery. In 2018, researchers studying a skeleton found in Borneo discovered something remarkable: a lower leg bone roughly 31,000 years old, showing evidence of a successful amputation. The limb had been surgically removed, the bone had healed, the person had survived. 31,000 years ago. No anesthesia, no sterile tools, no antibiotics. Someone cut off another human's leg and kept them alive. That is not an accident. That is skill. But here's what modern medicine almost missed. For most of human history, illness was not treated as a physical problem alone. It was treated as a social one. When someone in a hunter-gatherer camp got sick, the entire group responded. They didn't isolate the sick person. They moved closer. Someone fed them. Someone stayed up through the night. Someone told stories to keep them calm. And this was not just kindness. In 2015, researchers at UCLA found that loneliness activates the same inflammatory pathways as physical injury. Being socially isolated when sick makes your immune response worse. Being surrounded by people who care for you measurably improves it. Ancient humans didn't know the mechanism, but they had figured out the outcome 300,000 years before the researchers did. The shaman understood something else too. Fear kills. When you believe you are going to die, your body behaves accordingly. Cortisol spikes, healing slows, the immune system suppresses itself. The shaman's job, the rituals, the chanting, the ceremonies, was partly to interrupt that fear response. Modern medicine now has a name for this: the placebo effect. Which sounds like a dismissal, like it means fake. But a placebo that reduces pain is still reducing pain. An ancient healer who gave you the certainty you would survive. We spent centuries mocking it. We're only now beginning to understand how it worked. Here is what we actually lost. Modern medicine is extraordinary at fighting disease. We have antibiotics that would look like miracles to any human who lived before 1928. But we stripped illness of its social architecture. When you get sick today, you go to a room alone. You stare at a screen. You wait for a pill to work. Nobody sits with you through the night. Nobody tells you stories until morning. And researchers now think this matters more than we realized. Patients of strong social support heal faster. Not slightly faster, measurably, statistically significantly faster. The ancient response to illness: surround them, feed them, stay close, tell stories, make them believe they will survive, turns out to have been correct. Not poetically correct, biologically correct. The Neanderthal buried with healing plants wasn't primitive, he was cared for. 60,000 years ago, someone loved him enough to lay medicine beside his body. The oldest pharmacy in the world wasn't a building. It was a person who knew which plants to pick and another person who was willing to stay. We built hospitals, we gained everything, and we lost something we don't quite have a name for yet.